I'm Eric, and this is a brand new channel called The Art and Science of Healing Chronic Disease. And on this channel, we're going to focus on healing by aligning with nature. And I call it an art and a science because it's really, really important that you learn the science to heal chronic disease. But then you have to really personalize it to yourself in a way that paints a picture of health for you. Healing chronic disease and dealing with chronic disease is a difficult journey. And if you've been sick for a while, you know it's not easy dealing with the day-to-day struggles that people like us face. I've faced quite a bit of chronic illness, not as severe as some others, but I have many family members and friends who have faced chronic illness. They're dealing with it now. Some of them have gotten better. Some of them are still on their journey. But my goal is to really share with you what I've learned. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. None of this is medical advice. I'm just a guy who, I know how to read scientific literature. I know how to apply what I learned from scientific literature to real life. And I want to share that. I want to share that with you. I really have found that in the United States right now, the amount of chronic illness it's an epidemic. So on this channel, you're not going to find any advertising from me. YouTube will give you what they will. But I'm doing this for free because I really want to pass on the knowledge that I've learned. I can't promise you that I'm going to be able to help you heal, but I want to give you the information that has helped me. I want to give you the information that makes sense. I want to give you the information that the literature shows to be true. And I want to help you to align that with nature in a way that will allow us to heal the way we're meant to heal, the way we're meant to live. And I'm going to present this as a course, kind of like a class. This is video 1 of course 1, and I'm calling it The Foundation of Healing Chronic Disease. And what I want to be able to do is to give you this information in a way so you can directly apply it to your personal situation, whether that's fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or myalgic encephalitis or PCOS or arthritis or kidney stones or Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel of any kind, whatever it is for you. I want you to be able to take this information and today, starting today, be able to apply it to your personal situation so you can move on your path towards healing. Okay, so let's get right into it. I have read hundreds of studies. I've watched hundreds of lectures from scientists, doctors. I've read many books on chronic illness, chronic disease, and I've distilled the literature down to what I've found to be 2 main causes of chronic disease, chronic illness. Now, there are more, but I think that these 2 are foundational, and I want to spend time on each one of these. So I'll tell you what they are right up front. The first one is damage to the gut microbiome, and the second is damage to cell mitochondria. So we're going to focus on those 2 causes in this video today. Then in subsequent videos, we'll focus on nutrition that revolves around those 2 causes. We'll focus on other causes, and we've got a whole other myriad of things lined up that align with nature to help us fix chronic diseases. But let's move forward now with talking about repairing the gut microbiome and damage to cell mitochondria, because those 2 things, that leads to inflammation, and it leads to activation of the immune system, and that's what gives us so many of our symptoms that are related to chronic illness, chronic disease. So let's start with gut microbiome. There are literally trillions of microbes that live in our gut. There's more microbes living in our gut than there are cells in the entire human body. And those microbes in our bodies are symbionts. It's an ecosystem, and we live together. It's almost as though our body is a planet for these microbes to live in and to live on, but we benefit from those microbes in the form of many things. We're going to talk about those. So let me predicate this upon 3 words that relate to the gut microbiome. And those three words you've probably heard of. It's prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. So prebiotics are what microbes eat. It could be fiber, it could be amino acids, could be amino acids from collagen, but that's what the microbes eat. Now, probiotics are the microbes themselves, and postbiotics are the metabolites, or I'd even include the toxins that these microbes produce. So some of these metabolites are very helpful for humans, and others can be toxic to humans. And the location of these microbes and the number of these microbes becomes very important for our health. If these microbes are living in the wrong place, if they're living in numbers that are either too high or too low for what's appropriate for the human body, we're going to experience illness. We're going to experience sickness. So let me give you one of the prime examples of what happens in a person who has chronic illness. Over the course of time, as we're eating nutrition that is wrong for our body, these microbes, a lot of them start translocating from the large intestines, which is our fermenting gut, into the upper GI system. So that would be the small intestine, the duodenum, the stomach, even the esophagus, or even the mouth. And when these fermenting microbes move in and inhabit the small intestine, the stomach, in very large numbers, they begin to ferment in those locations where fermentation is not optimal, and where fermentation becomes very, very harmful to the human body. Because once these microbes start fermenting in the upper gut, they start producing alcohols, they start producing lactic acid, they start producing other toxins. These toxins, as you can imagine, an alcohol produced in the gut by microbes in large quantities would cause brain fog. It's as though you're almost drunk, and this is a real thing. This is in the literature. So as people suffering from chronic illness, we really need to reestablish the ecosystem within our gut so that we have the right bacteria in the right place, in the right numbers, to provide us with optimal health and get rid of these symptoms that we're feeling that are causing us such problems. Now, I've used certain tools to help me know how bad the fermentation was in my upper gut. I have a device that's called the Food Marble Air 2. You can look it up. Am I recommending that you buy it? You don't have to buy it. What it does is it measures the methane, number one, and the hydrogen in your breath. And that is indicative of the type, amount of bacteria, of other microbes in your upper gut that are producing gases, methane and hydrogen, that are causing us problems. So when I first started on my nutritional therapy, I measured my breath methane, which is produced mostly by an archaea called methanogens, and I measured my breath hydrogen, which is produced mostly by bacteria producing hydrogen. And every single time for the first month, I measured in the highest category that was possible for fermentation, meaning that I had a lot of methane and hydrogen because my gut was so out of balance that I had tons and tons of microbes producing methane and hydrogen. So I measured this for 3 months. In the second month, I was at the medium level, very, very consistently. And in the third month, I was at the lowest level possible. By the end of the third month, my numbers were almost zero for both methane and hydrogen. The graph went straight down from when I started my nutritional therapy, which we'll talk about the details of what that nutritional therapy consisted of and what may or may not be appropriate for you. But that graph went straight down. So that was confirmation to me that I was moving in the right direction. Now, I have no affiliation with Food Marble and the Air 2 device. Do I think it's a good tool? It depends on your personality. If you have the type of personality that enjoys data, that enjoys measurements and experimentation and details, then in that case, I think that this small device, which cost, I think it was maybe $300 or a little more, would be worth it for you because it will provide you with motivation. If you like to make spreadsheets and chart all your numbers, you might want to get this little device. It will inspire you. It'll keep you progressing. However, on the other hand, if you hate spreadsheets, if you hate data, if the thought of that makes you want to turn this video off now, then don't get the device. It's not for you. It doesn't suit your personality. It might suit your personality in that case if you used it maybe just once a week, maybe just once a month. But if you were felt forced into using it every single day, every morning at 7 a.m. when you wake up, if that gives you anxiety, don't use the device. It will be more distracting than it will be good. Instead, what you'll do is you'll follow the nutritional protocol that I'm going to explain in subsequent videos. You'll follow that very, very carefully, and that will give you the same results. You just won't be able to see it in the form of numbers. You won't be able to chart it on a spreadsheet. So as I've been going through all these studies and lectures and books, I've been thinking about what would be a good resource for the average person to use to learn more than what you're going to learn in these videos, to get details. And I've narrowed it down to one book, so it's not too intimidating. This is the book here that I would recommend. It's the GAPS. GAPS stands for Gut and Physiology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. And in this book, she uses over 950 different studies to explain the nuance of the gut microbiome, how the microbes of the gut microbiome are this beautiful ecosystem, and how those microbes in the gut translocate throughout the human body to help regulate everything in our bodies. And when this gets out of control, it becomes pathogenic. When it gets out of balance, when this ecosystem fails. And that's when chronic disease can set in. It may not be the only cause of chronic disease, but as I mentioned earlier, we're talking today about the two most foundational, fundamental causes or contributors to chronic disease that I've been able to find as I've sifted through all the literature. So if you're going to spend a few dollars on any resources, I would highly recommend this book. I have absolutely no affiliation with this book, with the publisher, with the author, none whatsoever. This is just a resource that I've found to be just loaded with information that you can apply right now today. When you start with chapter 1, you're going to find stuff in there that you can apply to your situation right now today that will begin to help add to your healing. It may be a long journey. There may be dozens of things you're going to find in this book you have to add. There's probably going to be hundreds of things. But when we look at it from just fundamentals, it's two things. It's the gut microbiome and it's the cell mitochondria. So I want to keep coming back to that. Two things that we're focusing on. So let's move on now and talk about mitochondria. If you took biology in high school, you've heard of mitochondria. We all know that mitochondria are the part of the cell where energy is produced. It's the part of the cell where ATP is generated. And ATP is extremely important for many functions within the cell. For example, things like even creating proteins within the cell. So you can imagine that a person who has damaged mitochondria might be more susceptible to chronic disease, or at least they would feel pretty bad because their energy production would be so low. So what is it that damages mitochondria? Well, there are several things that can damage mitochondria, but in this video we're talking about the big main things. So we're going to stay focused on that theme. And without a doubt, from the literature, from the lectures, from all the information that I've distilled, the biggest single factor that is damaging to the mitochondria is high insulin levels in the body. So why is this important? Well, the human cell, if you recall from biology, has a cell membrane. And this cell membrane is made up of what's called a lipid bilayer. And this lipid bilayer is not uniform. There's patches, there's islands that are called rafts. And these rafts are areas of extremely high density cholesterol and high density lipid bilayer. And this is where the insulin receptors are thought to sit. Now, what is an insulin receptor? Well, an insulin receptor is where an insulin molecule docks. So an insulin molecule docks to an insulin receptor. That allows the cell membrane to open a channel to allow glucose into the cell so that the mitochondria can then do their thing with the glucose to generate ATP. Well, what is the significance of this and why does it matter? Well, it matters because this is how the mitochondria become damaged. These lipid rafts, these areas where the insulin receptors are located, have a molecule called ceramides. And when insulin is existing in high concentrations, ceramide production increases very rapidly. There's a lot more ceramides than the cell needs, and they become very harmful to the cell. And one of the things that they can do is they can injure the insulin receptor so that now the cell cannot open up a channel to allow glucose to come in. The mitochondria do not have access to glucose, and so now the mitochondria cannot produce the ATP. In addition, large amounts of these ceramides can produce what's called reactive oxygen species, which are, in simple terms, free radicals. And these free radicals can strip electrons from what's called the electron transport chain in the mitochondria, resulting in damaged mitochondria. So why did I go through all of this? Do you really need to know all these scientific details to heal your chronic disease? Well, probably not, but I think if you have an explanation, if you have a visual picture, if you have a basic understanding of what's going on that's making you sick, you're going to feel more ownership with the treatment. And we're going to get into that treatment and talk about it. But quickly, just to review, so we've so far talked about the gut microbiome, we've talked about the mitochondria, and these two things are the main contributors to chronic disease. With regard to the mitochondria, if you want to learn more about it, here's a fabulous book by an author called Sarah Myhill. She's a doctor in the United Kingdom. She treats patients on a daily basis, specifically for chronic disease. And she speaks about mitochondria in this book. Now, when we get into our discussion on nutrition coming up shortly, one of the things we're going to focus on is how do we keep this insulin low? If insulin's the problem, then we want to keep insulin low. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to have another segment on blood work, specifically addressing where your insulin should be. And your insulin needs to be below 5 microinternational units per milliliter. If you can keep your insulin below that level, then the mitochondria will be able to heal and repair. If insulin's above that level, it's very, very likely that the mitochondria will either be getting damaged or they will not be able to repair fully. So for any chronic disease, we must first fix the gut microbiome and fix the damaged mitochondria. This is absolutely essential. And on the next video, we're going to focus on how to align our nutrition with nature in the way that our ancestors actually ate. So we're going to get into that in a lot of detail, but we've got to kill these destructive microbes in the gut, and we've got to give our mitochondria a chance to heal, or nothing else that we do is going to matter. You know, we can go to a functional medicine doctor, we can get all kinds of blood tests and breath tests and gut tests, and we can take all kinds of supplements, and we can do hyperbaric oxygen treatments, and we can do ozone treatments, and we can do all these fancy things. And they can help, but they're not going to make a permanent difference unless we first fix the foundation. We have to fix the foundation of the damaged gut microbiome and the damaged cell mitochondria. What I want to do at this point is to give you an example of how chronic disease manifests in a person. So let's just take as an example, let's say that a mother is pregnant. And before or perhaps during her pregnancy, maybe she has a course of antibiotics. And those antibiotics kill a good portion of the microbes in her gut. So now the baby who receives a lot of its microbiome from the mother is going to start out even before they're born with the potential to have a gut that's not optimal. Now let's say the baby is born, but for whatever reason, the mother has to have a C-section. So the child does not acquire the beautiful microbiome from the vaginal canal of the mother. So immediately this baby is at a disadvantage. Now within a few hours or a couple of days, the baby is given several vaccinations. Many of these vaccinations are known to damage the microbiome. So now already we can see what's starting to manifest in a baby that's only a few days old. So let's continue. So now the child gets to be 3-4 years old. They get a cold, they get flu, they go to the doctor, and the doctor gives them an antibiotic, which again kills the healthy, good bacteria in the gut. Again, you can see where this is going, how this is progressing. The child's given maybe some Tylenol or ibuprofen. These NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, are known to cause severe damage to the gut microbiome. So now the child is getting older and older. Let's say they get to the point, now they go to college. So now they're at the point in college, maybe they get mono, Epstein-Barr. Maybe they drink some alcohol. Maybe a female college student goes on the birth control pill. All of these things are damaging the gut microbiome. Now they maybe start eating a lot of carbohydrates. Maybe they've been eating sugar their entire life. This starts to jack their insulin up consistently on a regular basis all day long as they're encountering these high carbohydrate, high sugar foods in every cafeteria, every vending machine, every friend's house, every dorm room, everywhere they go. So now you can see where this is going. We're putting the child in a chronic state of damage to the gut microbiome and high levels of insulin damaging the mitochondria. So the system is primed. The system is primed for a chronic disease. So what happens next? Well, not every case, but in many, many clinically studied cases, what happens next is some event, some major event pushes the immune system, pushes the inflammation over the edge of a cliff. And the child falls into this state of chronic disease. So this could be a toxic relationship, maybe an abusive relationship. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be chronically high stress at a new high-profile job. It could be that the child moves into a new apartment or a new house that they bought, and the house has mold, and the toxins from the mold push the child over the cliff. It could be that they travel to a major city that has a lot of air pollution and they get mercury poisoning from the air. It could be a myriad of things that once the system is primed, it gets pushed over the edge of this cliff and the child now falls into a state of chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. We can go through an endless list of chronic diseases, but this is an example of how it manifests from the beginning of a person's life to the time when symptoms present themselves in a pathogenic way, so that now every day you're feeling brain fog, you're feeling fatigue, you're feeling bowel dysfunction, you're feeling bowel discomfort, you're feeling all these symptoms that those of us who suffer from chronic disease know. Now, nutrition is going to be a main focus of the next video, and the fundamentals of nutrition will focus on healing the gut microbiome and the cell mitochondria. We're going to talk about foods you must eliminate. We're going to talk about eating in an ancestral way. Now, I'm sure at this point you're sick of hearing me say the words gut microbiome and cell mitochondria because I've probably said it over 20 times. But those are the fundamentals, and the nutrition needs to be established in a fundamental way. If you're struggling with your chronic disease, please leave a comment down below. I will do my very best to help you, and if I can't help you, I will refer you in the direction that I think will help you to go down the path of healing for your chronic disease. I can't make you any promises, but at the very least, I will help steer you in the right direction. So that's it for today. I will see you in the next video.